This conference will now be recorded.
All right, folks. So if you look up at the board here and also at the notes that I provided you, those that are on campus and those of you online, you're looking at chapter 16 here as far as our PowerPoint is concerned. We're even looking at the reproductive system. When we think of the reproductive system, we understand that there's an aspect of it that is absolutely to reproduce our own species, right? So reproduce our own kind. And as such, these systems, right, are there and really promote that responsibility, that function above all else. Okay, so we'll work in conjunction with chemicals that'll be released, and that will be released upon different times of the month. In the case of the female reproductive system, and we're going to see as far as in the reproductive systems that are mature and able to reproduce, and we're going to see how these chemicals can interplay with the organs that are present within the system in order to produce certain cells called gametes that are going to help to promote reproduction of our own species. So let's move on and get into the PowerPoint here. And so what you'll see here, folks, is that we're looking at structures present within the reproductive system of the male and the female that are going to produce cells, and these cells, specifically the egg and the sperm, are called gametes. So if you want to highlight that in your notes, the gametes are the sperm and the egg. The gametes are the sperm and the egg. These are specialized cells for reproduction. These are cells that will only have half the amount of genetic material present within them. Okay? Because when they come together, the sperm and the egg, upon fertilization, we're going to have a complete cell with 2 pairs of 23 chromosomes. Okay? So all the cells within your body, other than the sperm and the egg, are going to have 2 pairs of 23 chromosomes. But in the case of the sperm and the egg, only half the amount of genetic material, because again, like I said, when they come together, this will create a complete cell. Now you'll see here that for the female reproductive anatomy, we have the ovaries. So the ovaries are these small structures about the size of, say, like an almond. Okay, they're a paired structure. Okay, and they are what's going to help to produce as well as mature the eggs each month, releasing one. Right. If we were to release more than one, there could be a possibility of fraternal twins, twins that were not the same egg, but released at the same time and fertilized. And so this is why fraternal twins will not look the same, right? As far as identical twins, yes, they are going to look the same. So from one egg that's split. So 2 different situations there. You'll see here that the reproductive organs of both sexes release these chemicals, these hormones, and they're going to be very important into first developing and maturing the organs of the reproductive systems of the male and the female, as well as contributing to the cells and the maturation and the preparation for, once we have mature organ systems, that they will be able to receive and to help promote the reproductive process. So another term used for the egg is an oocyte. So oocyte, these are the eggs. They will mature, bless you, they will mature as time goes on during the cycle for mature female, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. But you'll see here that released from the ovary, from this little almond-shaped structure, into an oviduct. You probably also heard the term used, fallopian tube. Fallopian tube. Sorry, one moment here. My spelling is not always the best, and so also known as, so fallopian tube, also known as the uterine tube, also known as the oviduct. So there's a couple of AKAs also known as for that structure, that tube that will not actually directly touch or connect with the ovary, but it will receive the eggs that are released by the ovaries. Now, this is a process that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail, but just know that that's a tube that's going to then take possibility, right, of a fertilization where the sperm and the egg come together. Fertilization takes place in these tubes, that fallopian tube, that oviduct, okay? And you'll see here that, let me get, actually, folks, give me one moment. I'm going to step away for just a moment here. Let me get our paper. All right, so I'm passing this little packet around. It just gives a larger image of what's going on regarding the structure. So let's take a look at the first page. So those of you online, I'm going to take you through, let's see here. There we go, this page right here. And so take a look at this image here on the board. So I'm going to back to this image on the board. All right. So as you're looking at this image here, so what we're looking at is in yellow and gold, that would be the ovary. Here would be the tubular structure called the oviduct. So here we go. There's the ovary. Here's this oviduct. You see how it looks like it's almost like little fingers or like a flower. That's the area that is going to receive the released egg upon ovulation. When we have an actual egg will be released once per month from a healthy female, right, that is mature in her reproductive system, and that will enter into that tubular structure, and that's where, when fertilization will take place, that's where fertilization is going to take place. But implantation of fertilized egg will take place in here, the uterus. So take a look for a moment here. So we have, here's the vagina, the cervix, the opening to the uterus. Here we then have, so the semen, the sperm, and also the ejaculate will enter into the vagina, pass through into the uterus and into the oviducts, the uterine tubes. And again, that's where the fertilization will take place, right in through in here. Okay, so here we have the ejaculate would enter into the vagina, pass through the cervix and into the uterus, and then pass through. And like I said, fertilization would take place here with the sperm and the egg. So let's go back here. Okay. So you'll see here that fertilization usually occurs in the oviduct, right, in that tube. The egg will travel into the uterus, and this is where it will implant. Now, monthly, right, when a female has a cycle, monthly, that uterine lining will shed. This is that menses. This is the bleeding that will occur. So what happens is that this organ right here, the uterus, it's a highly vascular organ. Okay, there are many blood vessels present, and so very vascular, and it'll have layers, and a layer that will shed every month. But this is the layer that, before shedding, if the fertilization takes place and implantation, the egg actually implants into that very vascular uterine lining, then this will then begin the process of helping to mature this baby, this little infant, this little fetus. Okay? Starts out very, very little and only a couple cells and will rapidly divide over time. So the endometrium, this is the inner lining that we're talking about there. The lower part of the uterus here, this opening, is called the cervix. Right? If someone says that they have cervical cancer, right? So cancer of the cervix would be in that region right there, folks. Would be in this region, this opening right here to the uterus. So the uterus, folks, as well as the vagina, they are muscular, okay? So they are muscular regions, and you'll know that, like, so premenstrual, for those folks that have cramping and such, well, what goes on is that the muscular organ of the uterus contracts in order to birth a baby. So what can happen when you're not, you're having your cycle and it's before your the beginnings of the cycle. This is where cramping can take place of the uterus itself, those premenstrual cramps. All right, and so the vagina, again, this is the structure that allows for the pathway to the cervix and the inner workings of the female reproductive system. Here you're just going to see in this next slide here that it's just showing you as far as the different structures regarding the female anatomy, and just the accessory structure, not the accessory, but the external structures for the female anatomy. Okay. Here we have discussion regarding the menstrual cycle. So I'd like you all to, though, in this packet here that I gave you on campus, I'd like you to go to this page right here. So go to this page right here. And I'm going to move for a moment here and go to this image here. So this is the image that I'm showing on campus as well as online. And so what you're seeing here, folks, first go to the very bottom part of the image, right down and through it here. Okay. So day one of the cycles that are going on as far as these ovarian cycles. So for the uterine cycle, day one would be the first day of bleeding, as far as the menses is concerned. Okay. So that would be day one. And for there, what after that lasts for a few days, and then you're going to have a building up. So this would represent the lining that actually will be sloughed off, will be released every month. So you'll see here that here it's gone down to the base layer for the endometrium, and then we're going to build it up and gradually build up that lining, and you'll see that there's a lot of vascularity present there. Highly vascular. See all the blood vessels here? Very vascular. Okay, that endometrium lining. Now you'll see as far as the 28-day cycle. Okay, the 28-day cycle. So this is an approximation, right? Because some women's cycles are maybe a few days shy or more than a 28-day cycle. Right? We do know that what will take place is that the last part of the cycle is always 12 days, is always 14 days. The first part of the cycle can vary, but again, roughly it's 14 days. Okay? And what you'll see here is that if you'll go above, so look above on your chart here. All of what's taking place here is also following this chart at the bottom, showing you from 0 to 28 days. Okay? So 0 to 28 days corresponds with what's going on in the uterus, as well as what's going on in the ovaries. So you'll see here the ovary, only one, because only one should be maturing an egg at a time, right? And releasing it upon ovulation. What you'll see here is that the first 14 days, as far as the ovary is concerned, we're going to mature the egg. So So here we go, first 14 days, and at that 14th day, ovulation will occur, and the egg will be released. So let me ask you this. Do you think that you could become pregnant before ovulation occurs? Well, if there were to be ejaculate present within a day or so before ovulation would occur, then that could be a possibility, right? But really, if there's no egg that's been released, can you get pregnant? No. Okay, like I said, other than the fact that a day or so before, if there were to be intercourse and the ejaculate was still present within the inner workings of the female reproductive system, yes, okay, then there could be a possibility, right? But know that the egg has to be released. There needs to be an egg present in order for ovulation to occur. So that people that are practicing different types of birth control methods, where they're just trying to figure out, well, has the woman ovulated yet? There are different things that they can do as far as taking a temperature, right? And the temperature for the female can go up a degree prior to and during ovulation. So there are some ways that you can do things, but you know we'll talk about later in the chapter here regarding foolproof ways of knowing that we can try to do all that we can to block from becoming pregnant, and so there are ways and barrier methods and such, and we'll talk about that. You'll see here that there are also different hormones. So FSH, LH, so follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone. These are very important hormones in the beginning part of the ovarian cycle in order to help to mature and have cells that will actually help to mature the egg and allow for it to be released to be fertilized. Okay? We'll see here that there's a increase of like a spike. You see the blue spike right here, folks? So luteinizing hormone is released at its highest level there. When it peaks like that, that triggers the egg to be released. Okay? So it's interesting how chemicals can control this. You'll see also above here that you're going to see that we have the hypothalamus, the anterior pituitary gland. These are also involved in starting the hormone cycle, the hormone releases that are going to contribute to follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone from being released. That FSH, that follicle stimulating hormone, if you look at the image, you'll see that there are these follicle cells and these follicular cells and the follicle itself that's actually developing over time. So it would make sense that this FSH helps to promote the maturing of the egg. Okay. Now, what you're going to see afterwards is that, quite interesting, is that after the egg's been released, there's still these structures present here. Well, as strange as it may seem, and they're microscopic, folks, these structures here, the corpus luteum, and then we're going to have what's called the corpus albicans, which is a whitish in color scar tissue. These structures here will promote hormones to be released and to help to actually increase the level and making sure that it stays this way as far as the thickness of the uterine lining, getting ready for a possibility of fertilization and implantation. Okay? That doesn't take place, and that's a problem. So you'll see here that, and notice also that as if there is fertilization and implantation taking place, then these structures here, this corpus luteum, will actually still produce hormones to maintain the thickness of this uterine lining in order to help the baby to develop until the placenta is actually formed, and so will be then helping to also make sure that there's hormone levels are good. Now you'll see here that estrogen and progesterone. So estrogen and progesterone are two important chemicals, also hormones, that are produced. Estrogen in order to help with development of the uterine lining. So you'll see here that it peaks here early on in the cycle, and it's helping to increase the levels. And then it stays at lowers a little bit, but it does stay at a decent level. The progesterone really helps to maintain that thick uterine lining. When that progesterone levels drop, that's when the first day of menses, of the bleeding, will occur for the menstrual flow. So having that progesterone there, it's progestation, meaning it's pro-pregnancy. So if a patient is pregnant, progesterone levels need to remain high in order to help to maintain this thick uterine lining. So really very important. So it's interesting how these chemicals work with the ovaries as well as the ovary as well as the uterus. So let's go back here and yeah, let's go right here. All right, so I'm going to back it up again. I just wanted to go over that with you a bit. Okay, so you'll see here that, again, approximately 20 to 28 days to complete the cycle. Again, uterus and ovarian both are a part of this cycle that's taking place. And so you'll see here that the egg will be released from the ovary, and that's upon ovulation. The hormones, these chemicals, help prepare the endometrium to receive and nourish an embryo. So again, like I said, the hormones are also helping to maintain that thick uterine lining, highly vascular, so it can help to maintain a pregnancy. There's a fertilization that's taking place, maintain and allow for implantation of that fertilized egg, and to keep it viable, keep it healthy and well. You'll see here the blood-rich fluid flows out through the vagina if the oocyte is not fertilized, and so we know that that's the first day of menses as far as the bleeding takes place. And that sloughing off, that removal of the outer layer present within the endometrium of the uterus. Now let's look at this next image here. And what we're seeing here, folks, is that this structure right here, so if we're looking at this patient on the side view, here would be the front, here would be the back, right? Anterior, posterior. And on the anterior, we can see that anterior to and below the uterus would be the urinary bladder, and here would be the urethra. Now, take a look at this for a moment and think about the fact that if a female is pregnant and the baby is present within the uterus and the uterus expands for the baby as it's growing, is it going to put pressure upon the urinary bladder? So look where the urinary bladder is, right here. Here's the uterus that's going to grow with the baby. So that's going to put pressure on that urinary bladder, and that can make the female feel like they have to urinate on a pretty regular basis. You'll also see that. Look at the posterior, look at the back area here. That's part of the large colon, right? So your colon and the large intestines. And so that's also going to be an issue as far as the baby develops and expands and such. So can this lead to constipation, for the female patient because of the close proximity to the large intestines and the rectum and the anus? Yeah, absolutely. All kinds of, and can contribute to also the formation of hemorrhoids, which would be issues with actual blood vessels that expand and get swollen around the anus and such. So in this region right here. So a couple of terms here you'll have to know. So you'll see here that we have menarche. This term menarche, it's the female's first menstruation, right? Their first period, their first time that they have this. This can occur between 10 and 16. So 10 is pretty young, right? But this can occur in younger women for sure. And so, but usually around 13 or so, 13, 14, this is when menarche usually will occur. Menopause. So now think about this for a moment. So menopause means that there's a pause in what's going on with the whole cycle, and that there's actually going to be irregularity and an actual stoppage of the cycle because menstrual cycles become irregular and they stop over time. And so this is for patients who are usually older, in their 50s, sometimes in their mid 40s to late 40s, this can begin. And this can have issues as far as that the patient over time will no longer will be able to get pregnant. So this is ends the fertile phase of life. The term endometriosis. This is when tissue from the endometrium, that lining of the uterus, can grow outside of the uterus. It's not a very well-known or understood type of process, but endometriosis can be really devastating and very painful for patients. I'm going to show you a video regarding that in just one moment here. So let's go to YouTube here. Actually, no, I'm going to stop sharing with you all. And I'm going to share my active screen with you all and let you watch the video as I have it set up for you all right here. My neighbor says she'll be at the election.
Ongoing series focused on women's wellness. Endometriosis is a disease that affects 1 in 10 women worldwide. Its origin is unknown. Women can go years without being diagnosed. That's right, but now women are speaking out. Celebrities like Lena Dunham and Susan Sarandon have all shared their personal stories to help bring more awareness to this disease. And registered nurse Jenna Bakshari-Rish is also trying to elevate the conversation. She spent years in pain until finally being diagnosed herself. We look like we're functioning and we're well, and if you only knew what it took to have me standing in your face with a smile on, you'd think differently. In 2014, Jenna Bakshari-Rish, a registered nurse, says she felt a pain that's etched in her memory. I was driving to work and just feel this excruciating pain in the right upper side of my stomach. I was like listening to music jamming 1 minute and then the next I can't breathe. The pain subsided, but it returned every month around her period. It was about 4 months of that cyclical pain before I decided to go and see my gynecologist about it. She told me that based on where my pain was, it didn't make sense that it had anything to do with my period. And so I said, okay. But the symptoms got worse and Jenna sought another opinion. She started asking me really pointed questions like, do you have back pain days? And does your pain keep you from working? Do you have pain with sex? I told her yes to all of that. And she said to me, have you ever heard of endometriosis? I'm a nurse and I had never heard the word before. The gynecologist prescribed birth control, but the pain continued to escalate. My good days are becoming less and less frequent. My bad days are becoming worse. My insomnia is just awful. She saw more doctors, tried different medications, had surgery, but nothing seemed to help. It was to the point where walking around my apartment, I was short of breath and having chronic constipation, I'm having nausea, and just this buildup of different symptoms. After 4 years, Jenna says she took control of her illness and found a doctor who recommended excision surgery, which cuts the disease out. You start to get to a point where you feel like this is the way that I have to live forever. I don't want to live. I don't want to live this life. This is how it has to be, you know. So he gave me my hope. Welcome back. Before the break, we shared the story of Jenna Bakshari-Rish, a nurse who says it took her almost 4 painful years to get her endometriosis diagnosis. Jenna is joining us along now with her doctor, Iris Borbuk, director of the Advanced Gynecological Laparoscopy Center and author of Beating Endo, How to Reclaim Your Life from Endometriosis. And welcome to you both. Let me begin with you, doctor. You were saying that everything you had learned in medical school was false. That is a scary comment for so many women who are looking for relief and looking for diagnosis. How is that possible? I learned more in my first week of fellowship, in minimally invasive surgery fellowship, which was focused on endometriosis, than I did in my 4 years of OBGYN residency and all of medical school. So go ahead. I was just going to ask Jenna, how are you feeling now? I mean, are you in pain at all, or did you finally find someone who told you exactly what was wrong and helped to solve the problem? Since I had my surgery with Dr. Cancenervo in 2016, I haven't had any endometriosis type pain at all. But that doesn't mean that my body completely works the way that it was designed to work. Having the disease undiagnosed for so long, having muscles that are tight and in pain for so long, they kind of learn how to work properly. And so there's still a lot of work that I have to do, a lot of physical therapy and things like that to keep myself functioning the way that I should. I was struck in the piece where you said that the doctor had given you hope to live. There's so much shame kind of around this conversation, around women's pelvic stories. What can we do to alleviate that and make it more acceptable to have these conversations? I think education, honestly. If the gynecologists understand the symptoms of endometriosis, if they're open when they speak to the patients, and the patients that are validated, and they share their stories, it's this boomerang effect of early diagnosis and people talking about it. And Jenny, it took 4 years to find a doctor who could diagnose you, but then you find it took some women 10 years, 20 years, I mean, living in extreme, brutal pain. What is going on? How could doctors not know that this problem exists if it affects 1 in 10 women? Yeah, that's the question that all of us in the community have. How are they so unaware that this is happening? And I think personally that not having a full understanding of the symptom profile of endometriosis, that it's not just a painful period, that there's other things that come along with it, like nausea and constipation and diarrhea and back pain and brain fog. And I think that our doctors aren't putting the picture together, and that's keeping us from getting diagnosed sooner. And you were saying in the break that you think this is actually criminal, that so many women have to go through so many hoops to get a diagnosis. What if women are listening to this right now and they're where you were in year 1 or year 2? What are the symptoms that may lead them to this proper diagnosis if they're experiencing what? So 90% of women with endometriosis actually present with intestinal symptoms. So constipation, bloating, diarrhea, painful bowel movements. From a GI perspective, women have painful periods, deep penetration pain with sex. And there's a whole host of urological symptoms such as urinary urgency, frequency, feelings like they have urinary tract infections. And what's unbelievable is of women who have infertility, 40 to 50% of women who are diagnosed with infertility, the etiology is actually endometriosis. Wow. So understanding that it's more of an inflammatory picture and how the endometriosis affects all the organ systems, and in Jenna's case, her diaphragm, it is so paramount to proper diagnosis and then early treatment. Jenna, it was interesting that you said, because I asked now that it seems we're talking about it more. Are doctors becoming more aware, or are female patients becoming smarter and being their own self-advocate? I think the patients are becoming smarter. We're realizing that it's not a disease that we are going to be able to just show up to our doctor and say, help me, that we now know more than a lot of our doctors do. And a lot of the work that we're trying to do with the Endometriosis Coalition is, and that's you started that to advocate and to connect to help on your own. Yes. And what's your mission? Our mission is to raise awareness for the disease. I mean, a disease that affects 1 in 10 women, yet you say the word and most people don't even know what you're talking about. I was just with a group of young women, and when I said, what I have and what we do, not a single one of them knew what I was talking about. And that's part of the problem, is that the general public doesn't know this disease exists, and then our doctors don't really understand it as well. Well, we want to thank Jenna and Dr. Orba for joining us this morning. For more information on endometriosis, please visit thirdhouroftoday.com, and also let us know what women's wellness topics you're interested in learning more about. There are.
Okay, so what I'd like to do before I go back to the presentation is just show you that. So as far as endometriosis is concerned, So this tissue from the endometrium, right, can go to multiple areas in the, I'll show you an image here. Okay, let's bigger image. So we're looking at the patient from anterior to posterior, from front to back. So the patient is facing us. So you can see that there are both the ovaries, the uterine tubes, the fallopian tubes. Here's the uterus, here's the vagina, here would be the cervix. So they're not even showing you that it can also, the endometrium, right, this endometrial tissue can go to areas within the abdomen, the abdominal pelvic wall and such, as well as all of these spots here where you're seeing that we can have this endometrial tissue move to in different areas of the female reproductive anatomy, as well as in the abdominal pelvic region. So remember, what I want to show you is that if you'll see here, so remember we looked at the image and we saw that it looked kind of like fingers, kind of looked like fingers or like a flower. Well, again, the uterus, the ovaries are not directly connected to the fallopian tubes. There's a space that the egg is released into, and then it will travel into the tube. But it's not totally covered over, so that there can be this tissue that can travel outside of the reproductive system. All right, so endometriosis, that's a quite a painful and uncomfortable and difficult condition for females to deal with, possibly. Okay? So endometrial tissue grows outside the uterus. All right, let me move. Turn on light for a moment here. Oh, thanks. All right, so let's go to the next slide here, and then let me share my screen with you all and go to the next. All right, folks, we'll go another couple of minutes and then we'll take our break. So you see here, as far as the ovarian cycle is concerned, so take a look at, and so go to, I'm going to tell you where to go to as far as what I've handed out to you all here at campus. So go to this image right here, please. All I did, folks, that are online, I just took a couple of the pages of the images and made them larger for those that are on campus. They have their PowerPoint, and as we're looking at the PowerPoint, as well as looking at this image. So this is the image that we're going to be focusing on, this one right here. Okay. So we'll come back to that, but just look at that image here while we're reading this here. So the primary oocyte matures and is ovulated. So meaning that if you look at on this image right here, so we're seeing over here all the way to the left, we have one egg that's going to mature and be released, right? One egg will mature and be released upon ovulation. So you'll see here, number 4, ovulation. So we've got a spike in luteinizing hormone. It's going to allow for this mature egg with all these structures, these follicles, to be released, okay? So you'll see here that it says here that number 1, one of the many immature follicles in an ovary, each consists of a primary oocyte and the surrounding follicle cells. So these follicle cells, we're going to have more of these follicle cells enabling and allowing for a maturation of this egg. So the fluid-filled cavity begins to form in the follicle cell layer. You see it here. The primary oocyte completes meiosis one and divides unequally, forming a secondary oocyte and a polar body. So there's structures that are going to go on to help to allow for this egg to mature. It's going to have then the rupture of the mature follicle will take place at ovulation, releasing this important secondary mature egg coated with proteins and cells and follicle cells. So you'll see here that this structure right here is going to be released out into the fallopian tubes. Now you'll see also that we have over here the yellow body and the white body. The corpus luteum right here, the corpus albicans. This structure right here in yellow, as the egg has been released and if fertilization will occur, this is going to continually produce and allow for the production of progesterone in particular, so that the endometrium, the inner lining of the uterus, will be nice and thick and allow for implantation to occur and maintain the developing fetus until the placenta is produced. Okay, so very important structure here. Now, if fertilization, implantation, if that does not occur, then this yellow body becomes the white body, becomes this scar tissue in the ovary. So this is the ovary, and it becomes scar tissue, the white body, or the corpus albicans. Let's go back. So you'll see here that the pituitary, again, the pituitary gland, as a result of stimulation from the hypothalamus, will release this luteinizing hormone, which will then allow for, it'll spike, and it'll allow then for that ovulation to occur. The follicle swells and ruptures, releasing the egg into the fallopian tube. Movements of cilia in the oviduct in the fallopian tube will move the egg along. So there's actually these cilia, these hair-like cells that will contribute to the movement further away from the ovary towards the uterus itself. And it works in concert with the menstrual cycle. So again, remember that both cycles, the ovary, and the uterine, work at the same time in order to contribute to the actual healthy development of a fertilized egg, or if there's been no fertilization taking place, then what will occur but the beginning of menses and the beginning of the cycle, as far as the uterine cycle over again, removing and replacing the inner lining of the uterus with a new inner lining of the endometrium. I'll introduce these next 2 slides here, and then we'll take a break. So you'll see here that the male reproductive system. So when we talk about the gametes, we said that that's a cell that's being produced. It's a sex cell. So the egg is the sex cell for the female. For the male, it's the sperm. And we know that the actual structure that's producing this gamete, this sex cell, the sperm, would be the testes. So these would be considered, the testes or the gonads. So the term gonads refers to the ovaries and the testes. Okay. So the testes produce the sperm. And then there's going to be different structures, glands, that will actually contribute to the ejaculate that are going to help the sperm to be able to make its way to the egg. You'll see that it says here that temperature inside the scrotum, the skin sac that holds the individual testes, must be cooler than the body temperature. And as such, if it's very hot, the testes will descend and will hang very low. if it's very cold outside, there's going to be muscles present within the sperm such that they're going to actually pull the testes up closer to the body if it's very cold outside. So they're regulated, temperature regulated. You'll see here that internal control mechanism keeps the temperature around 95 degrees. So 98.6, 97 point whatever, that's usually like you're healthy as far as internal body temp. So you can see that 95 degrees, much lower than the body temp that we'd usually be measuring. Muscles control or relax to move the testes closer to or further away from a warm body. Like I said, yeah. In the heat, so for a male, so we have asked females to do a breast exam, right, when they're in the shower. The hot water, it starts to loosen up the tissues, and so it's easier to palpate or touch and feel for any type of nodules or masses. As far as the males are concerned, same thing. Hot shower, the testes will lower, right? They'll go further away from the body in order to try to help to cool down the body. Easier to palpate and see if there are any nodules present, any lumps, any bumps that shouldn't be there, okay? And early detection, always a very good and healthy thing to do. All right. So I'm just going to introduce this slide and then we'll take our break. So on this slide right here, you're seeing that there are paired structures as there are in the female anatomy. So you'll have two testes, right? You'll have two epididymi, these epididymis, vas deferens, ejaculatory ducts. These are tubes, tubular structures, glands that are going to produce the ejaculate upon which the sperm are going to travel. Okay? So if a patient, if a male has an operation in order to prevent sperm, right, from entering into the system there and entering and preventing pregnancy, what's going to happen? What do they do? What do they do? They actually will cut tubes that are going to lead to, so these vas deferens in particular, these are the tubes that will transport the sperm. So if we cut them, we prevent the sperm from traveling, but there's still going to be, right? So there will still be an ejaculate produced. It's just not going to have the sperm present. So even though a gentleman may go through the procedure in order to, it'll come to me in a moment. But so I apologize. I'm just blanking on the nerve right now. But what we'll see is that this will, so there still can be ejaculate form because there's still going to be glands, and you'll see below the seminal vesicles, bulbourethral gland, as well as the prostate gland. These are all contributing to the semen, the ejaculate, the fluid upon which the sperm is traveling through. All right, folks, let's take a break, and we'll come back in a few minutes. So I'm going to stop recording.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right, folks, so we're come back to the male reproductive anatomy. So before we left, I mentioned how, I didn't say the proper term, but it's a vasectomy, right? So if you look here, the vas deferens. So this is that structure, that tube that will allow for sperm that is produced here in the testes, matured here in the epididymis, passes into this tube, passes here through the ejaculatory duct into the urethra of the male anatomy, and so it's going to mix with fluids and be ejaculated out of the body, right? So you'll see here that the sperm are produced here in the testes, matured in the epididymis, pass into this muscular structure, the vas deferens, and so a vasectomy would cut this structure right here. So a vasectomy would cut this golden tube right here and prevent sperm from entering into the ejaculate, and then this would indeed prevent prevention of pregnancy from this patient. But it would take a few months to make sure that everything is all good and that we're not having any sperm present within the ejaculate. So you'll see here as far as that, there are a lot of tubular structures. So this structure right here, this walnut-shaped structure called the prostate gland. So the prostate gland right here, right? What goes on, folks, is that we have the urinary bladder right here. So with the male anatomy, we're going to have a sharing of the tubes in order to allow for urine to pass through, as well as the ejaculate with the sperm for reproductive anatomy. You'll also see here that we have in posterior. So here's the rectum, penis. So we have here digestive structures from the large intestines. Anterior, here's the penile body, the penis, with its erectile tissues, as well as, like I said, different structures that are going to contribute to the ejaculate and be present within and pass through the ejaculate upon intercourse and ejaculation. So the epididymis, this structure right here that's right directly connected to the testes, this is where we have the immature sperm become mature. So it's a coiled structure. The epididymis, the coils that are present within, approximately like a ridiculous, I'm thinking or remembering offhand, approximately like less than 20 feet, like all like coiled up within this epididymis. It's a crazy amount as far as, but having this coiled structure will then allow for the time for the maturation of the sperm to take place, final development of the changes in the sperm. Muscle contractions propel the sperm from the epididymis into the vas deferens upon ejaculation. So you'll see here that they move through these ejaculatory ducts, these tubes, and pass through the prostate gland into the urethra for passage outside of the body. And here we can see on this image here, so we're looking at as far as that, here's the epididymis, testes, the epididymis, the vas deferens, right? The ejaculatory ducts are these just little tubes that allow for then entering into the urethra. Right? So urine as well as ejaculate will pass through the urethra. So the term semen, right? It's the fluid that contains these different fluids that will contain different important nutrients and lubricants in order to allow for the sperm to survive the acidity of the female reproductive anatomy. So you'll see here thick fluid expelled from the penis during sexual activity. Seminal vesicles, the prostate gland, as well as the vulvourethral gland. These all contribute to this semen. Now, if the reproductive anatomy present within the female, the vagina, is acidic, then this would have to have, this fluid would have to have an ability to buffer that acidity. So it's not so acidic for the semen, for the sperm actually present within the semen to survive. So you'll see here that there's buffering secretions present that are produced by the prostate gland, as well as nutrition, right? Sperm uses energy for the sugar for energy, the fructose, present within that seminal vesicles being produced. You'll see here also that the buffering of that acidic environment, so alkaline environment is more favorable for the sperm to be able to be alive and to move. Next slide here, you're seeing that as far as passing through, they'll form in. So how do they actually begin their journey in being produced? So seminiferous tubules are structures located within the testes, and it'll take a period of time, and we'll call this spermatogenesis, the formation of sperm here. And what will happen is that it'll go through changes and produce the sperm, and the sperm will again become mature in that epididymis. You'll see here that the tail, the flagellum, at about the 9th to 10th week of the process, that'll form in order to allow for the movement. Now, understand also that there can be issues during development where some sperm will not be, because so millions of them are produced, okay? And that not all of them are going to be healthy, normal sperm. And so some can have multiple tails, some can have multiple heads. I mean, there can be some strange changes that can occur in the sperm, but healthy sperm will produce over a period of time, And at the 9th to 10th week, we'll have the ability to have this tail that will propel it into the female anatomy present within the ejaculate, the semen. These tubes right here, so if we were to take and cut in half the testes and look inside, you'll see that we have these seminiferous tubules. This is where the sperm will be produced. And then again, it'll pass into these other tubes where in the epididymis, oil coiled very tightly together, will then allow for the maturation of the sperm to take place. And then what you're seeing is it's bilateral, both sides will have, the sperm will pass through this tube, the vas deferens, into the ejaculatory duct, right, and into the urethra of the male anatomy. You're seeing here also that we have seminal vesicles, we have the prostate gland, and we have these little tiny bulbourethral glands right here that all contribute to the liquid that the sperm are present within and help to buffer as well as feed, give nutrition to the sperm. This next image here gives you a little bit more insight regarding what's taking place as far as this meiosis that's going to take place, this formation of the sperm. So here we start at the inner part and work our way outer until we get to the healthy sperm right over here. We're going to see that the sperm have a head and they have a tail, a body and a tail. So look at this next image here, and you're seeing that what's going on is that this structure here, this sperm, this gamete, this type of sex cell, carries half the genetic material, right, in the head. Okay? It's going to have this mid-piece with mitochondria. Mitochondria allow for the ability to produce ATP, this energy upon which also the tail will move and propel it into the area of the female anatomy to allow for fertilization to take place. So very important as far as this tail-like structure propelling this cell into the female anatomy. Now, again, like I said, if there are issues with legs, tails, different other kind of issues that can take place, having it be not a viable type of a sperm, this could be a problem, and this could affect the ability for the male to impregnate the female. So just as we saw that estrogen helps a female produce mature structures within, right, in order to become pregnant and to participate in the reproductive process. Also the males, so estrogen, really we say that estrogen would be the feminizing hormone. Well, in the case of the males, it would be the testosterone, would be the masculinizing hormone. And again, the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, the anterior pituitary gland, both contribute to then the production of testosterone. You'll see here that there are structures that testosterone is needed for sperm production, and there are other types of hormones that are also, you'll see FSH, also important for the production of sperm, and hormones really play an important role in the male anatomy. And you're just seeing here, this is called a feedback loop, where we end up having the levels of testosterone being really controlled by what's going on in the inner part of the brain, the hypothalamus, and that anterior pituitary gland, which will then send hormones to the testes in order to contribute to testosterone production. You'll see here where it says C, luteinizing hormone. So that's also present within females, right? But different for males. Prompts these special cells called these Leydig cells in the testes to produce and release testosterone. Testosterone is used to stimulate formation and development of sperm, as well as it was important for the development of the maturation of the male reproductive system. So you'll see here as far as that sexual intercourse, it's also known as coitus or copulation, right? And so technical terms used for sexual intercourse. We get it as far as the males will experience an erection ejaculation. Females will also experience vasodilation, which would be more blood flow to the area in the genitals, and also contribute to the whole process of the getting together of these two cells in order to allow for fertilization to occur. So blood flow plays a role in both aspects of this process. Right? You'll see here that also that present within the female anatomy, mucus is secreted, right, from the cervix to actually allow for contribution for lubrication for that canal, as well as contributing to then the movement of the sperm deeper within the female reproductive anatomy. You'll see here is that fertilization is taking place. Sperm in the egg, there's one sperm, one egg, fertilizing it. Fusion of the egg cell's nucleus and the sperm's nucleus begins this process of, and really what goes on first is this formation of the zygote. That's the first cell, that's the first complete cell. So the sperm, the egg, they're only half cells. They only have half the genetic material. Coming together forms a full complete cell, and this is important for the whole process of fertilization and completion of this zygote and the production of a human. So millions of sperm in the vagina after ejaculation, only a few hundred will reach that upper portion of the fallopian tube, the oviduct, where fertilization will usually take place, as we said before. This next slide here, you'll see as far as this term, capacitation. So chemical changes weaken the membrane over the sperm's acrosome, this covering of the sperm, at contact with the egg. Enzymes are released from the membrane and a clear path through deep within and allowing for the sperm to fuse with the oocyte, with the egg, will take place. So rapid chemical changes in the egg's membrane block any additional sperm from entering in. So that's important, and that's quite remarkable. So I'm going to show you a video regarding this right now. Well, let's go to this next slide first, and then we'll go to the video. And so what you're seeing here is that, so many of the sperm will come in contact with the egg, but only one will be allowed to enter in and create the zygote and begin, again, this process of fertilization and such. So let's take a moment and we're going to view this video. And I'm going to stop here with the recording, but I'll still, well, no. Yeah, I'll continue on with the recording. I'll show the video and then we'll we'll finish up the chapter on Thursday. Yeah, I'm going to stop.